Hi, this is Kelsey Fikowski for AP Gov Review, and in this short clip we're going to look at fiscal federalism. So by definition, it is the pattern of spending, taxing, and providing grants in the federal system. If you recall that federalism is all about the national government working with state and local governments, and so there could be sharing of power, and in this case, the federal government is going to be collecting billions, if not trillions of dollars every year in taxation. And it's going to use a lot of that money and return it back to the states in the form of different types of grants. And you'll see that many different sectors, from health to education, income security, transportation, are amongst many of the sectors that benefit quite heavily from fiscal federalism. And you'll see that the amount of federal grants that have gone to the state and local governments have significantly skyrose since the late 80s up and continues even today, with the heavy amount of funding that states do receive. So how does it do it? Well, you have what's called the grant system, which is basically distributing the federal pie of taxation that is collected every single year. So the first type of grants, which states really are not all that fond of, but of course money is money, are called categorical grants. So these come with strings attached based on the fact that you have to spend it in a certain category, such as transportation, and you have to use it for this specific purpose. So it's basically telling the states, yes, you can have this money, but you can only use it for this particular purpose. Now, some of those grants are based on merit, others are based on formulas. So states with fewer people might receive less money in the form of this categorical grant. Now, the second type are called block grants, and states love this because think of it like a block of marble. States can basically sculpt that financial, package, if you will, to support a variety of programs based on how the state wishes. So states love block grants. Not a huge fan of categorical grants, but at the end of the day, free money is, of course, free money. So states love federal dollars that are given to them, but sometimes you have what are called mandates. And these are coming straight from the federal government and direct state and local governments to comply with federal rules under the threat of penalties or as a condition of receipt of a federal grant. So as we said, states love grants. They depend on grants for their local budgets. But sometimes the federal government will say, if you don't conform to, for example, increasing your age limit for drinking from 18 to 21, we're going to hold back your federal highway dollars. Well, states can't afford to, have most of their budget dedicated to highway. So as a result, all 50 states complied because they want that money. So sometimes, money is a great thing, but when it's going to be used in a coercive type way, states begin to really resent that. But even worse than mandates are what you would call unfunded mandates. And here you see a few of these where it's going to say, hey, states, you have to do this. And by the way, we're not giving you any money. A good example of this is the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, which is going to require the renovation of public buildings to conform to, for example, wheelchairs. So if you're going to create wheelchair ramps and create all these accommodations, include elevators for people who are handicapped, that costs a lot of money. And the most unfortunate part for the states is that there's no money attached, hence the term unfunded. Ultimately, with this relationship of fiscal federalism, it has now resulted in a concept known as devolution. And this started with Ronald Reagan, where you're transferring responsibility of policies from the federal government to the state and local governments. A good example of this would be Medicaid. You definitely still see a federal government playing a role in this, but states now have a greater role. And under devolution, there's no guarantee of financial support from the federal government, but the idea with Reagan especially was to return this back to the state and local level. So now the states are now going to have more power and more control, but again, no funding is guaranteed. But if you look at the number of governments today, 87,576 when you add it all up. The federal government has a lot of power, has a lot of money, and it can influence each and every one of these sub-governments, if you will. And they do that through fiscal federalism. And that really today defines the relationship between the national government and the state government.